All right, so we're back. It's been a while. Can't even tell you how long it's been. Uh, we already started the show, but Blue decided to bark at a delivery guy, so this was take two. And Rob, what have you been doing since the last time you were on here?
Let's see, when was that? Um, Before or after we made the sabbatical of Lou's house last summer?
Man, has it been that long?
Somewhere in there. But
Good Lord.
yeah, it was a pretty wild summer and sliding into fall with the um, dog fights and attacks and then surgery and recovery and all that good stuff. But saved
Yeah,
my
I
dog.
remember it's the day after I got back from seeing Lou. Um, I had to go in for a procedure, and I had this thing right here. This, this way. This is a 3D. I think it goes this way. Yep,
Huh.
it goes this way. Maybe this way. This is a 3D printed silicone stent for my bronchioles, and it keeps my chest open. It was collapsing all the time. Every time I coughed, it sounded like I had the coop, and it keeps it gives it some rigidity. And I remember being able to breathe quite
Yeah.
better, much better after I had this installed. I just had it maybe like 2 months ago. I had this one replaced with a brand new one, and it's this is going to happen like every 6 months or so. So um, that's my medical experience after seeing Lou. Now I remember it wasn't too long that you were hit by a car,
Yeah,
and you were
July 5th. I got standing on the side of the road with a disabled vehicle, and some old lady, white knuckle tight, came driving by and didn't want to give up any of her lane and hit me across the back with a collapsing rearview mirror on the exterior passenger door. Folded it up nice and tight. You could hear the
was she
creak.
looking over the steering wheel?
Yeah, literally. Probably 90 years old, little white hairdo, like cotton candy. Just had a curmudgeon look on her face, and I was off the roadway, but she she didn't want to have to swerve whatsoever to inconvenience herself in her lane. And I made sure I was off the roadway, and there were no oncoming cars you could see for at least half a mile. So she had
Yeah,
plenty of room to just kind of nudge it over a foot, maybe. But
yeah,
she threaded it so tight that she wanted to. Luckily, I was the vehicle I had was on a two-wheel tow dolly, so I had the protection of the dolly wheel for me when I was pressed up against the driver door of the disabled car I was towing, and so she couldn't hit the tire, or she would have went ramping off. So luckily, that gave me about a foot. So she wanted to breeze by in less than a foot with the side of her car, but the mirror got me and tagged me. And there's no way she couldn't have heard that because my wife heard it from inside the truck with the
yeah.
windows shut and when it hit and the big squeak. So she came running out and asked me if I gotten hit. Yeah, smacked me right across the lower back. Good times.
Yeah, and then you got real close to a dog. What happened there?
To my inside old pit bull, uh, my wife threw a bone out to the other pit bull that's outside. And when the inside dog went out, he noticed the bone, tried to take it from the younger outdoor dog, and he wasn't having it. So I heard this ruckus inside the house of dogs fighting and went out and find them both locked on each other's throats on the ground. And the first one that suffocated first and went unconscious was going to die because that's just the way they roll. And I tried for 10 minutes unsuccessfully to pry them apart and beat them apart, and all they do is fight harder. So I ended up picking one up in a sleeper hold who had the other dog in its jaws, and it was unconscious at that point. So I figured I probably had 30 seconds to a minute to save it. It was pretty bad. So I choked him out, and my bicep snapped because I picked up both dogs, about 180 pounds of dog, And I evidently am not young anymore. But I held on until he went unconscious. The other dog hit the ground, woke up, and came back into the fight. But he's half blind, so he went for the other dog's throat again, which is where my wrist was, and bit into it to the bone and shook it vigorously. So I dropped the other dog and punched him halfway across the yard to get him off my arm. And then I called Anna to take me to the hospital to get sewn up, and then they did emergency surgery about a week later.
I remember seeing the pictures, and they were pretty gruesome.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It was not PG. It wasn't a safe PG type of images. You were eight.
Oh, no. It was pretty bloody.
Yeah.
But the one dog had the other one down by the throat on his back, and I watched him go limp. And, I've done it with people and other dogs before, and the same dog when he was going to kill a Labrador that strayed into the yard. And he's a pretty mild-mannered dog until he gets in a fight, and then he fights to win. I don't blame him.
Right.
But, damn,
Yeah, besides all that, I know for a fact you've been very busy. In fact, you've been busy for about 2 years now working on a project of yours. So you want to tell everybody that's new what you've been doing, and those have been around for a while. Hi, Linda. Kind of give them a heads up on what you are still doing.
Yeah, back in late October. Well, it started in July of 23 when I noticed that Mick West was blogging about being a Wikipedia editor and had tried to flip a priest atheist and strip them of their faith, which I thought was pretty low rent to do to somebody to try, take their faith away, and to where they lose all their identity and purpose and belief structure in life, to a nihilist view that we're just an accident of random evolution and mutation, and we're food for the worms, basically. I don't see it that way at all, but that just showed me, and then he wrote in his blog that he left and Wikipedia, but it just didn't seem right the way he wrote it. So I went looking for that incident and found out that he had been banned for sock puppetry in 2007 from Wikipedia as an editor, but they left his other account, Herd of Swine, going. And I started looking at a couple months after that, after I published that, then I started seeing some new language about David Grusch when he first came out, and it was in Twitter. So I went to see where that common source was, and it was Wikipedia, that they had created an article about him. So I started looking at the editors in that, and then opened up Lou's page, Hal Puthoff's, Jacques Vallée. I would run down the list, and it's the same names that I see editing these. So I was like, and I recognized the writing of Lucky Louie right off. It's like, this is most certainly Mick West's writing. I've read enough of it to know his style and his tone.
Yeah.
And so then I recognized about 12 other UFO topic editors. So I went researching and investigating all the articles that they were mothering and creating and controlling, because they had a unique monopoly, which I found out and figured out, which was not, it's against the rules. And then I learned of the Guerrilla Skeptics and the greater organization, Committee for Inquiry, that is a parent organization that's been in existence over 20 years, that has all these subsidiaries, debunker skeptics, projects and groups that a lot of them get paid to edit and publish their articles. Like a Skeptical Inquirer article, they typically get $1,500 for each piece of propaganda that they publish from it, and then they reverse edit those what they consider mainstream reliable source into Wikipedia articles. So if they need consensus on an article and a majority for the mainstream consensus topic at hand, they can manufacture it when they don't have it otherwise, and they control the narrative. They've been controlling the narrative, and not just on UFO topic, on religion, on specific pages, especially Judeo-Christianity and Islam and Mormon. There you have that one. Key pages locked down, but I found Wikimedia Foundation is working with the Tides Foundation, Google, Soros and other investors to with an enterprise project to provide bulk data from Wikipedia into Google and chatbots and AI and like Siri, Alexa. They draw their data from Wikipedia on any related topics, and they have about 5,500 pages that they monitor and prioritize according to the demand at the time, and then they focus on those to control the narrative.
Right.
So that's what they've been doing and continue to do, and they are defaming the people they disagree with and keeping the stigma alive and well on this topic and their related science and academic pursuits. That anyone that dares give any legitimacy to the UFO topic or the possibility that NHI or UAP aren't human and other sentient beings, they are labeled as pseudoscientists, purveyors of bunk and sensationalism, denigrated all over Wikipedia. The talk page comments are awful, and they're special message boards. And since I've been bringing attention to this, they've drastically altered their communication style that's available to the public. They've taken their chatter off Wikipedia where it's supposed to be, and you can't canvas, which is getting another editor to help support you and your viewpoint on a given article and position on Wikipedia, and then trying to gain a consensus of how to edit it and what slant. They block and ban editors that try to bring in other single editors, and they get routinely topic banned or Wikipedia banned. They get sock puppet chips, anything they can to knock them off the chessboard Wikipedia.
Right.
So now they're pushing this enterprise project, and there's a massive lawsuit in India suing Wikipedia for slander or something, but their wholesale defamation and false control of the narrative to where it's got to be their viewpoint. And Jimmy Wales, with the Tides Foundation and Google, they are working to translate every language of the English Wikipedia and push it to all nations in all languages, right, and then use the English Wikipedia version as the single source of information on all the topics that they cover, which is extensive. But not only that, they're going to have the reliable sources external from Wikipedia in this endeavor. What are not reliable sources is going to be measured by who controls the reliable source in Wikipedia. So the skeptics controlling the narrative on many of these topics decide what is credible and what's not. Say if a scientist gives any validity to the UFO topic or a reporter, then they are deemed not a reliable source on that topic, and they can't be used as a source anymore, or their media outlet. Hang on 1 second. I got to throw this fucking cat out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Anna.
Bring your hoe.
Can you get this damn cat out of here? Ross Coldhart with News Nation. News Nation is a reliable source in Wikipedia, except on the UFO topic, and except for Ross Coldhart, they are both not reliable topics. Like Michael Schellenberger and others now are not reliable sources on this topic either. Matthew Pines, it goes on down the list. George Knapp, anybody that gives this UFO topic any validity whatsoever, they deride and demean all over Wikipedia to ensure that no one would dare think that there's any legitimacy to this topic whatsoever. They're controlling the narrative, and they claim that they don't, and anybody can edit Wikipedia, which is that is a misleading statement, and it's not accurate. Yeah, you can edit it technically, but it'll be quickly reverted. And if you continue, you're going to be banned. And it happens all the time, every day. They continually ban opposing editors, and their base of editors keeps dwindling because of this bias and bigotry that they're doing towards anyone that opposes their viewpoint, which this particular brand of skeptical inquirer fellows that are a conglomerate of like James Randi Foundation, all them, which I find interesting, that train magicians on how to manipulate and trick human perception are some of the leading skeptics in this, and they take magic lessons like Mick West of how to do sleight of hand and fool people.
Right.
So that's disconcerting as well. Did just then we have them going after mediumship or people that profess to have the ability to tell somebody's future or whatever to give readings with, and there's solid science behind that it actually is true, but they won't allow any edits into Wikipedia to advance any information like the telepathy tapes. Any proven science, and is not, it's forbidden. So like they keep bringing up this James Randi $1 million prize. That's bullshit too, because what it actually said in the contract was that he would pay out over 30 years $1 million. But James Randi did, but it had to be his test, his rules, under his supervision, and people have attempted it and failed because he controlled the narrative. He wasn't an honest broker with it. It was a media tool that they use and still use to this day. It did exactly what they meant for it to do, to discount anyone that dares venture into this topic. But people like Hal Puthoff, who have advanced significant inroads in science and has peer-reviewed papers and has a stellar academic body of work out there, he attempted to get pseudoscientist label off of his Wikipedia page and presented these 5 peer-reviewed papers that weren't related to the UFO topic whatsoever. And the skeptics discounted that, and their argument that he's a pseudoscientist was by a botanist that wrote a book and stated that he was a pseudoscientist. So the author of that book was also a skeptic fellow or somebody closely aligned with him. So basically, again, they manufactured the consensus, and Hal's not a young man. This is his life's work. And when people want to find out about Hal, they go and Google it. The first thing that pops up is an information box, and that information box goes to Wikipedia, and they know that, and they target the algorithms for the Google search engine to bump it up in the feed. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle. The more views a page gets on Wikipedia, the more likely it is to get viewed. So all these people like Will Elizondo, David Grusch, on down the line, when you do a Google search, you're going to get an information box most likely from Wikipedia, of all things. And like the Kennedy assassination on YouTube, when you go and watch a video on it, it pops up an information box of Wikipedia. You go to Wikipedia, and it's the Kennedy conspiracy theory page. And guess who curates that? Lucky Louie. And it happens to also be a topic that Mick West is keenly interested in, because it's one of the biggest conspiracies in the United States ever. So they're both mothering that topic, and they have pretty much right down the line of what Mick West has expressed interest in. So is Lucky Louie, and they've even had the same arguments. Lucky Louie would have inside Wikipedia with other editors. Mick West has had within 24 to 48 hours on the same specifics, same people, same documents. It's just, I archived so many examples of this now. From what I'm compiling, because Mick is a smooth talker and he knows it, and he's honed his skills over 20 years. And what I found in one of the statements that Lucky Louie made early on, like in 2007, and it holds true today, is that he doesn't do a lot of editing in the actual article on Wikipedia itself. He argues it in the talk pages to control the narrative and shape it into his perspective. And that is where he's developed his debate skills, and being able to bludgeon people with the control of their other skeptic editors that are, I call it colluding, but they call it canvassing. Any editor that tags another editor on Wikipedia and says, "Hey, can you help me out here?" Then that's canvassing, and they get blocked and censored for that.
Right.
But the skeptics do this all the time. The debunkers, they have their special project pages that they go to, like a reliable sources topic board, or pseudoscience topic board. They've got all these boards that they have where they go and canvas with each other and discuss what's going to be accurate and or not according to their viewpoints. Kind of like the Japanese airline encounter over Alaska. Susan Gerbic, the Gorilla Queen skeptic, decided that it was too much fluff and stuff in there. And oh no, we can't. And her and Lucky Lily and Hot Gatling and a couple others on one of these special talk boards decided that page read too much like it was an actual UFO encounter, and they couldn't have that. So they went in and put in reliable sources like Brian Dunning, who is not an expert at anything except how to con people. And the point I was trying to make earlier is that they went after one female medium so hardcore that she was convicted on something else aside from mediumship. It had nothing to do with that. And they were able to get mainstream media coverage of her secondary sources. And I think they manufactured some as well with Skeptical Inquirer. They then edited into her profile that she was a convicted felon in the first two sentences, which is what shows up first in the search engine. And Susan was giving lectures on that of how proud they are that felons in the first two sentences, mission accomplished. We've completely character assassinated this woman.
Yeah, but that's like, isn't it like going on Mick West Wikipedia page, and the first thing that should be on there is claims to be a pilot, which he's not.
Yeah, he took pilot lessons, and there's no record that he actually got certified and licensed. And he couldn't, according to his own blog, he could not pay attention to the gauges and all the dials at the same time because he's got some deficit that may be like adult ADD or something. At any rate, he couldn't monitor what needs monitored to basically fly a plane, and he was a flight risk, literally. So there's no way he could have a pilot's license, and he has some kind of recurring visual field distortions that he's admitted on his interview with Robert Bartholomew, and on another interview he had where he talked about watching spiders raining down the walls at night, and he realizes that those aren't real. So he doesn't think that pilots are necessarily hallucinating or lying, just that they may misunderstand what they're viewing, because he does, and that's a false comparative analysis he's making.
What I'm seeing here, Rob, is that this is nothing but a big psyop. Things came to a point, maybe within the last month or so, when the Department of Government Efficiency discovered that some media sources were being paid, were getting funded by
special interest groups and governments, both.
Right.
But this isn't just
possible. Anything's possible.
Well,
also, Rob, I've noticed that you have been doing this for 2 years. I've seen the work you've done. The amount of evidence that you have compiled it's really breathtaking. It's a lot. You just don't have one or two pieces showing, for instance, the identity of
Avalanche, because
Lucky Louie is. You basically have novels of it.
Mick West is, I am highly confident they're the same person, and unless he admits it, there's never going to be a way to prove it unless it goes to court for like defamation or something.
Right.
Class action lawsuit that would force unmasking by Wikipedia, like what India is doing right now, and expose them for who the editors truly are, because most of them use aliases. I figured out who the top dozen editors are, along with Lucky Louie, and what their real names are, and those weren't difficult to figure out and prove without a doubt who they are, because a lot of them edit their education and their specialities, and they put out topics through Skeptical Inquirer, things like that are so disparate from each other, but yet there's a single editor that edits both of those topics in Wikipedia and mothers those pages. What is the likelihood that they have that the editor has the same interest that Skeptical Inquirer does, but also hangs out? The skeptics by their anonymous names in Wikipedia mirror what you see in Skeptical Inquirer fellows and on this topic, and they're invasive in Twitter, Reddit, anywhere there is a forum, they have their hands in it to control the narrative. And I found out this isn't just a battle of ideologues. It's also pay to play, because there's big money in this for, say, big pharmaceutical companies. And one of the editors, Val Jean, is a physical therapist, Robert Lee or whatever his name is. And anyway, he's a physical therapist. He edits chiropractic pages on Wikipedia, all of them, and puts out propaganda of how that it is a quackery and pseudoscience, and should be, it should be illegal. So there should be a conflict of interest there, because he's editing his competition in a profession that's been licensed and accredited and proven through the scientific studies, but he's publishing all this propaganda of why it shouldn't be legitimate and people shouldn't use it as a method of treatment, just like he's doing with his political views of having Trump derangement syndrome. And he's editing all the Trump pages and anyone affiliated with him with all this propaganda, just waves of it.
Right.
So it just, there's no end to this, and I'm doing it pretty much on my own, because it's difficult to conceptualize if you don't stay immersed into it, to map it out. So, I unfortunately found that out, that it's kind of a lonely endeavor to go at. But the problem is Mick has spent 20 years building his brand and arguing it, and being convincing to people and gaining their trust, that being able, to prove that he's Lucky Louie when he's denying it emphatically is gonna, they say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, I'm going to provide that. I've already got it. And AI had to catch up with the Chat GPT, because when I started with the stylometry comparisons last year, it didn't have the ability to run the specific Stylo R dedicated tools to do writing analysis that are specifically created by expert programmers on that specific topic, to give a percentage of probability that two authors are the same. The two written bodies of work are the same author that wrote them both.
Right.
So even when they try to hide it now, I found out just in the last 3 or 4 months that GPT can now run the software, and it has the ability to look for patterns of when somebody's trying to conceal that they're the same editor. It even has ability to see consistent patterns of showing that they're trying to artificially show that they're separate editors, but there are unconscious characteristics to writing styles that bear anyone out, that you can't hide and mask, because you're not even consciously aware it's there. And even if you were, you're not going to stop it. By our age, it's matured into our style, who we are, and personality. That doesn't change. So I've been able to run some pretty huge writing samples through the software now, and I've gotten around 95% probability they're the same person. So, but
I'm sorry for interrupting, but just not only that, you have other evidence besides this this AI comparison stuff. You also have, like, for instance, when Lucky Louie says he needs to go do X, Y, and Z, the same time Mick West has to do X, Y, and Z on the same day.
June 19th, 2023, June 18th, Lucky Louie states, well, I'm going to be away for the weekend because I've had something I need to do. And then on June 20th, Mick West writes on Metabunk that, sorry, I was away yesterday. And then on their social media, his wife is blogging about how it was her birthday and he cooked her dinner. So, I've got several examples of that, where Lucky Louie indicated he's going to be away for the day, and then Mick West also on the same days is AFK that they state. And so many comparisons that I have also, where like June 7th or so of 2023, when David Grusch first went public, he had a 5-minute interview with News Nation with Ross Collard and Michael Schellenberger on there, and they completely humiliated him. And he made all these notes that he thought he was going to get to speak about during that segment, because he'd been called as the expert before that he portrays, And he even states that he portrays an expert in the media because he's not. He's just a self-professed like science writer. Lucky Louie gave Mick West in Wikipedia that title. That was just kind of ironic. You're not supposed to edit your own page, but if this turns out to be him, let the chips fall where they may. I doubt they'll do anything about it on Wikipedia because I found where many of them, like Lucky Louie, probably have other sock puppet accounts for different topics, and they are aware of each other having these. And after I started this, they came out with asserting that, well, you can have sock puppet accounts as long as you're not abusing Wikipedia, it's okay. But when they oppose an editor, even if they're not abusing it, if they have a second Wikipedia editor account, they get banned from the platform, period, forever. They're done. And
well, they have their own rules.
Yes, they also write the rules.
Right.
Joshua Schroeder was up for arbitration committee for bludgeoning somebody, another editor, and he went during that arbitration committee debate that was running for several days. He went and changed the definition of bludgeoning while they were debating his fate and the severity of what he did. He went and diluted the definition down in his favor, and they did nothing about it. And what the hell? They preach a good game of following the rules, but they write the rules, and they are not really rules. They're just suggestions and guidelines, and they'll tell you that. Yeah. So they don't have any rules. They have the only monopoly, which Jimmy Wales openly endorses. I found several incidents of that in mainstream media where, like, Valjean has been called out for his political biases. Jimmy Wales has come in defending them, saying that, well, they're keeping lunatic charlatans off the platform. And they pay their administrators and their ARBCOM members and their bureaucrats. There's big money behind this. So if you're a pharmaceutical manufacturer and your competition, you want to eliminate some of your competition or dial them down, all you have to do is influence Wikipedia to promote the one manufacturer and not, and basically edit the other one down to degrade their reputation, just however they want to do it. I mean, they control the narrative. So it's a huge injustice, and people across multiple topics, they come out with these seminars and articles and things to try and promote this as a legitimate topic and trying to remove the stigma. Yeah. And I'm trying to get them to understand, if they can't stop this persistent stigma that is metastasizing across all information areas on the internet, then it won't matter how many one-off presentations they give and how compelling and convincing it is and how factual. It will be drowned out in a sea of skepticism and derision by the same group across multiple platforms, and most people will not ever fact check to understand it's the same exact people. Because
it sounds like a conspiracy to me there, Rob.
It is. You can use your chat, GPT, and ask about a certain person, and it'll give you an opinion. And then you go and say, "Hey Siri, hey Alexa," and it'll give you the same opinion. And then you go to Google and look at Wikipedia, and it's the same sentiment. And like, I'll be damn, okay. So now I know about this person because I've gotten at least 3 independent sources, right? No, you need to ask it what its sources were on AI. And you will find on specific people on these contentious topics, they are all sourcing Wikipedia, and it's the same damn editors that are controlling this narrative across multiple platforms. And that, to me, is a gross injustice of being able to put the truth out and accuracy. They represent maybe a 0.001% of humanity in their little clique. They're not even a measurable degree of what their ideology is, and the mainstream consists of humanity. They are the vast majority, just like this wokeism that we've had in the United States. You've got a massive minority trying to push the majority to accept their viewpoints, and it's not based in science. It's not based in fact. It's based in ideologues that are promoting a narrative. It's an agenda, and they're pushing it global. They have been for decades, and like the Soros Foundation stuff, most people are not wise to it, and they have metastasized and multiplied in the dark for 20 years. So it's going to take a little effort to counter that, improve what they're doing, and start to bring public awareness with this. At the least, the public needs to be made aware of their bias and their inaccuracies because of that. And I think people should at the least be able to opt out of having a biography on Wikipedia. If it doesn't fit if it's not acceptable to them, they should have a right to take it off Wikipedia, to ask it, hey, I opt out. I don't want my presence on Wikipedia portrayed like this. And why can't they do that? Jimmy Wales and these skeptics all say it's a compendium of human knowledge. No, it's the opinion of skeptics of what human knowledge is, a secondary source of human knowledge. They're not an actual encyclopedia. They're a reference index of what their opinion is of factual data. On the sciences and stuff that's settled, Wikipedia is accurate, but what they have their hands in, it's all their perspective that is pushed.
It's they're in control. They feel like they're in control, and it probably
they are in control. Yeah, like the woman that they labeled a felon, they don't give equity, due process of administrating the rules evenly. Say like Mick West's Wikipedia page is a coat rack of just the glowing accolades of him, that they make sure, the skeptics do, that they have their Wikipedia pages giving them in the best light possible. But on the same token, they know that labeling somebody conspiracy theorist like Lil Zondo will defame them and damage their reputation. They understand this. I found the edits where they specifically state this, that we need to get enough reliable sources that label X person a conspiracy theorist before we can edit it into their profile, because we know it's going to cause them harm. So we need more mainstream media to say this, and then we'll put, like Susan Gerbic stated, we'll put conspiracy theorists right back in the title with Lil Zondo as soon as we get those articles. So
hold off right there, Rob. Go ahead and hold off. All right. So one of the things I really want folks out there to know, that you haven't taken a break. I know you haven't really said much in a year, but I know for a fact that you've been busting your butt with this. And I hope just because you're silent doesn't mean the investigation is not happening. Things are still in the works. Do you believe these folks could be held liable for defamation?
Very much so. And the India case and some others are proving that. What's interesting is that they have Tim Farley is an expert programmer and very intelligent person. He's one of the head authors, editors for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry out of Amherst, New York. And as Susan Gerbic wrote around 2010 or 2011, he gave her the idea of, guerrilla skepticism, where you come in like guerrilla warfare, asymmetrical, and make surgical strikes. You're in, you're out, fighting a larger, opposing force. Literal military asymmetrical warfare tactics applied to the information narrative on the internet. And that gave her the idea to create the Guerrilla Skeptics group. And when she conveniently won the James Randi Foundation prize, she used that money to incorporate the Guerrilla Skeptics Wikipedia with her Just-in-Time Productions 501 nonprofit. So I don't think she realizes, and she's one of the only editors that edits under her name, her real name. She claims to have 150 editors under her that she guides and is responsible for. Well, she's accepted liability for them. And Committee for Inquiry now has a layer of legal liability protection because she incorporated. So there's a buffer now between them and Wikipedia and liability. It would have to be circumvented at the greater, but she's opened herself up to accept a tremendous amount of liability for incorporating, but also one of the few that only edits under their name. So there's a reason they use alias names on Wikipedia, and Mick West even blogged about that. And I've got an article I've drafted where he talks about in a blog why he started using aliases on like 5 different platforms of anonymous names, because he didn't want to be found out, because there's such contentious topics and embarrassing crimes. He stated he didn't want to be known by name in these. Well, they've created so much hostility and aggression towards people in Wikipedia against other editors and topics they dislike. Any editor that promotes them, they are just vicious towards. And they're say, when I first started this, they would have typical comments about Lou or Hal or Ross Coulthard or George Knapp that just shred them, call them grifters and con men and all this other stuff, and worse. They still call Lou Elizondo a liar, and that liars lie and we can't trust him. He's not a reliable source, period. And just like David Grusch, that they will state they don't go by facts. They go by what the mainstream consensus is. So the mainstream consensus, of course, demonstrates that the majority of people don't believe UFOs and NHI exist in context. But there's that Operation Mockingbird where the Air Force has admitted creating stigma for 75 years now. Of course, people don't buy into this topic. It's just conspiracy theories, just like the JFK assassination, that there was more than one shooter. So,
well, I've always felt that Operation Mockingbird still exists, and it was proven when media sources were getting paid by the USID to influence articles against a rival political party that where they should be neutral, right? So anybody who watches media, who watches politics, sees it. I mean, it's plain as day to me. Hopefully
they're not supposed to do original research and interpret the data to fit their belief structure. But that's what they do. They don't take an article that's already, a secondary source on a topic or a person or whatever. Then they give their interpretation of that. They go and cherry pick the data to fit their narrative, just like on the UFO topic. And there's many topics to do this with, but I'm using that as the best example because that's kind of the field we're in right now.
Right.
So they are keeping the stigma alive and well. And they edit, like with David Grusch's page, that there's been no, they get side with Kirkpatrick. There's been no evidence of extraterrestrial visitation and a illegal reverse engineering program. Well, that is the mainstream consensus, but it doesn't mean it's factual. And there's plenty of secondary evidence out there that says to the contrary, an avalanche of it. But
I believe they're nothing but a psyop operation that's funded to do what they're doing. And I sincerely believe that you'll go down in history as a hero in this. I know you don't look at yourself as one, but in my eyes, the things you're doing hopefully will benefit all of us. Shine light in those dark areas.
If they were being honest about their belief structures, which, like Susan Gerbic is, I'm not calling her an idiot, but the definition of a useful idiot is somebody that is being fooled into performing a service for somebody and they don't realize they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel bad for her in a way that she's not, I'm not calling her dumb, and it has nothing to do with being a woman, and she has a hang up. But there are very intelligent people like Tim Farley that are involved in this, that influence her directly, that knowingly are manipulating her to promote their cause. And it's not her as a person that they treat so special. They could have anybody fill that position and they would treat them like that because they are advancing their agenda. This is guerrilla warfare. They're manipulating her, plain and simple. And she needs to understand that. And they've also put her out there for liability because she's using her name. She's incorporated. And she keeps stating that she's got all these editors under her that edit Wikipedia. And, she claims, why didn't I try and figure out who all of her Guerrilla Skeptic editors are? Well, they edit topics that aren't that important. They're kind of low-level editors. Unless they need help on important topics, then they'll go jump on board with that. but that they're really not major players in this big game, as far as I can see. But I have mapped out who a lot of them are.
Yeah.
They're just I don't advertise because it's not important. You know,
Yeah.
um, they're not major players in this, but they're accepting liability for it. But
Mm-hmm.
the point I was trying to make about them labeling that woman that was a medium a felon and deriding her reputation for that with
Right.
character assassination, you're talking a felony that maybe was a very low level crime, but it technically came across as a felony. Then you have Brian Dunning, one of their most celebrated skeptic fellows,
Yeah.
who has no conscience, and he was a convicted felon and spent 14 months, 15 months in prison for what he pleaded down to about $400,000 or $500,000 through a intentional cookie stuffing campaign of eBay, where him, his brother, and another person defrauded eBay for about $7 to $8 million over the course of about 5 years.
Right.
So he got rich off of that, and he's out there. And Gerbic, who is a bastion of justice, and righteousness, doesn't, they excuse what Dunning did of being a felon and a criminal mentality because it wasn't a victimless crime, and she goes against mediumship because she was probably wounded from that. But, she has her flashpoints just as, all people do. But
Right.
she ignores the harm that her fellow skeptics do with their agendas and their lies and their fraud, like what Dunning did. He should have in his description at the top, not way down in the bottom, that he was a convicted felon too. They should have applied it equally, but they don't.
Right.
And Ben Radford was also called out by another skeptic that had a conscience, actually. Skeptic is what she goes by, found in like 2014 that he falsified facts for one of his articles and completely changed the narrative on what was actually factual studies and science behind it that he sourced. He completely changed it the opposite of what it said to suit his narrative, and then edited it into Wikipedia. So he's in Wikipedia too as an alias, which I know what it is. Same as Brian Dunning and others. I've got the number. I've got their names.
Right.
And when I roll out an exhaustive amount of information of who Lucky Louie is, I'm going to roll out who probably the top dozen editors that he has with him on this topic to show that, I didn't. There'll be enough evidence to prove without a doubt to any reasonably minded, conscious person that has a pulse that this is the person that I suspect that they are.
Right.
It's going to be, you have the burden of evidence in a civil suit and a criminal, that the burden of evidence isn't as much in civil torts as it is for criminal convictions. But I've got enough that stand up in criminal court by now.
You can.
If it went in front of a jury, there's no way they would deny that that's who they are if they were being honest. And that's what I wanted to have. And I had to buy. First of all, I taught myself Python and tried to run the stylometry program last July, but my computer didn't have enough RAM for it. So I had to buy a new computer back in late summer to be able to run the programming, which I couldn't afford. My Jeep was still on blocks when I got, from last fall, when I tore the axle down and then couldn't put it back together after I got in a dogfight. But, I felt this was too important to not pursue. So I bit the bullet and bought it. So
I know you sacrificed a lot, Rob.
I'm not being funny for this. And my wife is ready to, divorce me or kill me in my sleep, one or the other, because I spent way too much time on this. But she knows the importance of it. She knows how much harm it's causing people. And like David Grusch and Lou and so many others have put out there, whistleblowers are being killed because of this topic. And as long as mainstream media, politicians, scientists, and law enforcement believe that there's nothing to this topic and that they're just liars, grifters, and con men, they have no protection. A lot of them went public to try and keep from being erased, like some other whistleblowers were that didn't go public, and well, it's a mixed bag, but they have a better chance of staying alive if they go public than if they stay in private. And so I suspect the motives of people like David and Lou and some others going public was in part to self-preservation and to
Yep.
get the truth out, because they wouldn't sit down and shut up.
Yep.
These editors in Wikipedia and these skeptics claim to be bastions of integrity and honor and protecting, information and justice warriors. They're not. They are promoting.
They're the worst of the scumbags on earth.
They're the criminal
villains.
mentality, and they don't realize it. They are the they are the bad guys in this, defaming good, honest people that are putting their lives on the line for the actual truth. And that's one of the things I wanted to get into was with, I saw on Twitter just the last day or so that it said that I think it's Burleson or somebody hired David Grusch on as a senior staffer on the UFO topic for a 4-month stint. I want to remind people, David Grusch, when he gave his July 26 testimony 2023 to Congress, where he came out and stated that the entities within the U.S. government and private aerospace are in possession of craft and alien bodies.
Yeah.
And that there is a illegal off-books crash retrieval program that's been running for many decades now. The Pentagon has been trying to prove his narrative false. There's been all kinds of media and experts coming out against him, but I think it speaks volumes that he was hired by congressional staffers on. He's been in front of the Senate Intelligence Committees. He gave 11 hours of skiff. People complain that, well, Grusch has never been in a skiff with the congressmen that were in that hearing on July 26th. No, he hasn't yet. The powers that be in the Pentagon blocked that shot, and the intelligence community is dictating policy to our lawmakers, which is bullshit. They are not the fourth branch of government with controlling powers. They're not even a branch of the government, but they think they are, and they've ran it like it is for many decades, which is what the Kennedy Papers release show, and the USAID shows, that they actually, the bureaucrats are running the government. So they just, with impunity. So
it turns out all the conspiracy theories were correct.
Yeah, they're going to be proven true. And, Mick West has built a franchise on his little niche, reinventing himself over and over and over. And every time, he's got some kind of a personality disorder that everything he enters into, he thinks he's the best at. And it's kind of like the real Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right.
Doesn't realize that but he thinks he is. He portrays himself as, but it's an imposter syndrome. He's not the expert he thinks he is, and I'm going to prove that. They think that they're correct on this topic and others, but they're not. The fact that David Grusch is being hired on the UFO topic after, it's almost been 18, 20 months now that he gave congressional testimony. He gave 11 hours of skiff testimony before that to intelligence committees in Congress and to the ICIG, along with 40 other whistleblowers that had firsthand evidence that either have worked in this crash retrieval program or still do, whether it's in this DoD subsidiary silo of a unacknowledged SAP, or among aerospace private contractors that work in tandem with them. Right. Those are murky lines that they don't even know as members who they're actually working for. Kind of like what Jake Barber talked about recently, that he wasn't even certain of who he was working for until things got hot and he got injured in his team and were needing to try move out of it, and they got set up to be eliminated. And they're tier one operators. They weren't having that shit. So they said they came on a scene where there was brass on the ground. I dare say they may have popped some caps themselves, but they're still standing. And my point was, David Grusch is still standing after all that's been thrown at him. Even leaking his medical records, of where to find them to the press.
That was a low blow.
Oh, that was disgusting. How many veterans have been in combat, especially, that don't have PTSD? It's a very small number. So for them to come after David Grusch and claim that he's damaged goods and can't speak with any authority or credibility because of that, that's complete utter bullshit. Because when you have an affliction and you're injured or you have an illness, you go and get treated for it. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, same as other functional members of society and government and military. You know, most of our military commanders, I dare say, have PTSD and even traumatic brain injury, because the explosions of percussion things that they've been around, they all have it to some degree. So to say that they're singling him out is not credible testimony, because he had a PTSD event of a close friend getting killed in combat and another one committing suicide. Who wouldn't have PTSD from that and have, you know, and drink themselves into a stupor at some point, you know, out of desperation? It's human nature. You know, welcome to humanity, people. And they deride him and demean him for that. It's just disgusting. This is why I do what I do, to help these people fight the good fight, because you know, they were out there risking their lives for the truth. They refused to sit down and shut up. You know, Lou started this in this latest generation of whistleblowers in 2017 coming forward. But, you know, David Grusch picked up the torch that was lit from Lou and several others, and they continue on with this mission. So for David to be hired now into Congress for 4 months with these committees that are investigating, and it's bipartisan, this demonstrates that his testimony is credible. Like the ICIG found that it was credible and urgent and kicked it up to the intelligence communities to investigate. Well, they have tried to suppress that investigation, I think, from what I can find out in the media, that the investigation is still ongoing, but it's basically parked somewhere on somebody's desk in a file. You know, it's not moving that we know. There's nothing published on it anyway to get sight of it. But there was something that was published a little while back that said that most facets of that weren't still in play, except they couldn't state that it wasn't still being investigated. So weasel words to try and infer that there was nothing there and they're not investigating, but they actually still are. Right. Is my understanding. And David wasn't cleared, you know, David Grusch wasn't cleared the first time around through DOSPER to state that he had seen firsthand evidence of some sort. But he got approved later, several months after he first came out, to be able to state, like he did in a short 6-minute BBC interview with the first ICIG, Charles McCullough, on that interview where he did state that he's seen some form of firsthand evidence. So Mick West and all these other debunkers that claim he's never seen any firsthand evidence and just heard interesting stories, no, he has experienced firsthand evidence of some sort, but he's not authorized to say what, so they can stick it in their ass.
Yeah, it sounds like they're trying to muddy the waters.
Yeah, they're trying to discount his credibility. But if his testimony wasn't true and it wasn't valid, he would have been discounted by now. You know, Sean Kirkpatrick has basically decimated his reputation and career by trying to go against Grusch and discount him. And he lost because he plays stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Going up against somebody with the intellect of David Grusch and the integrity he has and honesty, truth is on his freaking side, and he prevailed against this weasel of Sean Kirkpatrick. You know, that went hard to try and discount him based on "Trust Me, Bro," and had nothing. So basically, got ran out on rail from Arrow as a token effort, and you know, into obscurity. So you know, see you later.
I got a quick question, just out of the blue. How much money have you made doing this, Rob?
I'm running a pretty big deficit. No ways to do this. I'm not paid anything.
So you're not a grifter? Yeah, you're not a grifter, right?
Nope. I'm not selling T-shirts. I'm not hawking videos. Nothing. I'm doing this out of you know, integrity.
Doing it because it's the right thing to do. You've identified an issue. Basically, this conspiracy of the PSYOP operations of antagonist. I've seen the evidence. To me, it's overwhelming. If any of you guys are having a hard time sleeping at night, it's your conscience trying to tell you something, right? And you should listen to your conscience, because I tell you what, all of this that you've done, Rob, it's not for nothing.
Nope.
It's not for nothing.
and I've even found high-level government officials editing Wikipedia. I found their actual accounts.
Yeah.
So it sucks to be
Let's
you.
not
So like I
show
said,
all the hands here, Rob.
no, but just saying, people that think that they're invisible, they're not.
Yeah.
I may not be a lot of things, but some things I think, good at is, and they've even ridiculed me this in comments in Wikipedia a while back. That, he says he's good at recognizing patterns. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I am skilled at that. I've proven it, and they're not laughing now, and they won't be laughing when I roll it out.
And when you do roll it out, when will that be? At your whenever you decide, right?
Yeah.
You just never
I
know.
have to
Could
do
be
it. I
tomorrow.
have to. It can get so angry. We both swore an oath to protect this nation against enemies, foreign and domestic. You as in the Navy, me in the Marine Corps. I took that for lifetime commitment because I saw that, that like Reagan said, that freedom is only one, is perpetually one generation away from losing it. And
We came close, didn't we?
evil triumphs when good people do nothing. So I'm not going to sit down and shut up and sit back when I'm watching good people step forward and put their ass on the firing line and take the slings and arrows for the good of the whole.
Yeah.
I may not be able to soldier anymore on, kinetically, more than a mad minute, but I can damn sure do this for them to contribute what I can. But I have to do it in intervals because it can get so infuriating and it's very upsetting when you understand the totality of what they're doing to people is disgusting, frankly. And I'm not having it. I'm not going to let it go. There's somebody in Twitter trying to smooth talk me, did as a Wikipedia editor, but won't tell me who they are, trying to basically being a little red devil on my shoulder. Well, it's not really that bad. And it's not your fight. We got this. And if the UFO topic comes out that there's something to it, we will cover it like it should be. I'm like, that's not your decision to make. You don't own Wikipedia. You guys think that you have control of it because it's been sanctioned through whales and such. But yeah, they may control the narrative on Wikipedia, but that doesn't mean they're harbingers of truth. And it's going to be circumvented at some point because when their inequities and their falsehoods become known, it's going to be a major story, and a lot of people are going to be jailbroke of understanding that they are tremendously biased, defamatory, and are applying agendas, not just misinformed because of their good intentions, but making honest mistakes. They are not honest brokers for what they're doing. They, at least the people at the top, understand that they are pushing false narratives on some of this.
Yeah.
And they're doing it because it's profit motivated, and profit and power is what motivates the people at the top of this in Google, Tides Foundation, Wikipedia, Skeptical Inquirer. The heads of all those understand this is money and power in motion. This is how you control the narrative and their franchises and their dynasties and entire governments.
Yeah.
So there's intelligence operatives from every nation in Wikipedia that are editing, their various agendas and monitoring, which to an extent they need to watch for, we can't have another 9/11. So they need to be good at their intelligence gathering. I condone that. I don't want to expose anybody that's doing that. It's putting forth a good faith effort. And I've recognized a couple maybe, but I'm not going to name who they are. I don't want to break their stride.
Yeah, there's a time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I know whatever decision you make will be the right one because like me, being me, I just want it to be Christmas morning. I can't tell you how many times that I've seen your evidence that you presented, and I want to tell the world, but I have to take a seat, sit back and think about it. There's a time and place. This isn't, I just want to show the world all the hard work you've done, Rob.
I appreciate
And
that.
and it once this all comes out, I think things will be less depressing than it is now. With you still doing this investigation. Maybe you just never know when you'll release that information.
No.
I won't even ask you because it's whenever you decide.
they keep saying, yeah, if he had it, he'd have put it out by now. Well, that's not true. I understand from the first round of my bringing this out when Matt Ford so graciously and George Knapp on Coast to Coast Radio almost a little over a year ago now both platformed me to put this out there that this is taking place, and it opened the eyes of a lot of people that went in and found out that I was correct in what I was stating about the manipulation of Wikipedia and controlling the narratives across many topics. But I also understood in the course of this that they have spent decades building up their franchises and their narratives, and they've honed their skills. After the first round, I realized it's going to take a lot more to overcome that and get people to accept the truth, because a one-off presentation, unless it's overwhelming evidence, is just going to be dismissed, because he'll be out there with his whole apparatus of skeptics running interview after interview like they did the first time. No, he's wrong. He's not. He knows nothing about Wikipedia, and he's false.
I've seen the evidence. It's just so overwhelming. We're not talking about one or two pieces of evidence.
And that's why I decided to go after at least a dozen others in his close proximity on Wikipedia, because it will just be more concrete to prove to people when they look at the totality of it that, if he's accurate on this many people, then it does give validity that he's probably right about Mick as well, with the certainty that he's Lucky Louie. And so I am creating an overwhelming amount of evidence that is, I would say, way beyond compelling. And now that ChatGPT and AI is caught up, a few months ago it was able to run the program, but now they went up from 4.0 to 4.5. It can even better process the data. And one of the problems I had was breaking down complex instances of compelling evidence and information, to break it down into a small bite-sized narrative, an outline. And then if people wanted to see the exhaustive evidence of it, they could follow the footnotes. But I was having a hard time figuring out how to interface that on my own and convey it to somebody that could write it. It was proving to be a very challenging endeavor. So now AI has caught up to where I can feed it the instances and the information I have, and it can distill it down into brief outlines that are easy to understand and don't take hours, because it was like 6 hours worth of information I shared on Matt Ford's the 2 episodes that he recorded with me last year. And most people aren't going to watch that.
That's always been my concern about, there's so much evidence. How in the world are you going to communicate that to somebody like me, who has a very short
bullet point outline with index with footnotes, to where here's the statement, here's the general gist of it, and the exhaustive information is after the summary. You can read it for yourself. It's all going to be included. All the programming and how it arrived at the conclusions it did. It's all going to be in self-contained documents along with the writing samples, so people can run it for themselves and get the same conclusions from their AI. And I do know that you can tune AI to tell it what you want it to repeat back to you and bias it. But there are empirical ways you can test that with trustworthy people that would be honest brokers to run the data and confirm it, that are independent. And that's what I wanted to accomplish, was being able to put it out there with enough information that has a brief summary to lay it out, and then the exhaustive evidence that people can take and with their prompts and run it themselves, you get the same conclusions out of the AI that I have, and decide for themselves. And not just one person. These other people can thank Mick West for his overzealousness on this, and Gerbic and a few others for inspiring me to do this, because it needs done. They have I look at people like David Grusch and Lou and Ross Colhart and George Knapp and Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée, and those, that this is their life's work. And some of these aren't young people anymore, and their reputations are being completely character assassinated for this. And I can't in good conscience let that pass. So it's very
doing the right thing. I know you're a human being, and I know you've had days of doubt like, can I continue this? But with a little encouragement, it's the right decision. I believe you'll go down in history of uncovering this garbage. And for those who are, who are the antagonists, and who you are, go ahead and sleep well tonight. Just sleep well. I'm sure you have no conscience. You got nothing, absolutely nothing to worry about.
You,
All the data he has, it'll be
yeah,
for nothing. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and
yeah,
go back to sleep.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, if I had it, I'd have rolled it out by now. Well, not actually true, because like with finding the India lawsuit against Wikipedia and Wikimedia Foundation, when I opened that up about a
mhm,
month ago, there was and the whole. This is like layers and layers of an onion. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
I know.
And with the India opening up, they had all that evidence that they had exhaustively collected. So I had to go through all that, and
Yeah.
then I find that there's even governments and some of the biggest media corporations and billionaires in the world that are pushing these agendas. So I
Yeah.
had to sort out where the skeptics end and where the other ones are, and draw a dividing line. But the further in I get, the more murky those lines get, and there is no breaking point that I'm finding. At the higher echelons of their leadership, they are all intertwined. But I have to draw a demarcation, stop somewhere, and compile what I have, review it, and I'm gonna have somebody else review it. At least a few people that I trust, and then figure out how to submit it. Because I've even had people that were very skilled, white collar people in the last 6 months that I didn't know prior to that came on board with me and offered to help. And then I found out they weren't actually trying to help me. They were trying to subvert me and convince me
Yeah.
not to continue with this. And so I've learned my lesson also to be wary of those type people that are, too good to be true, and not take the candy. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to finish this. I started this fight. I'm going to finish it.
Yeah.
And
Also, I would like to throw in my comment of what I cannot confirm or deny that maybe somebody from this organization, Guerrilla Skeptics, have already contacted you and has provided information, but I will not confirm or deny that. Um, and we've been doing this for over an hour. I know we could talk about it for another 3 or 4 hours, but and we also wanted to talk about current events. I think that should be it for today. And our next broadcast, we'll talk about some really cool current events that's been happening. What you say there, Rob?
yeah, to your point of that, these skeptics have stepped on a lot of toes and disenfranchised a lot of people that put their trust in them. So,
Yeah,
there's been a lot of platforms built on disgruntled editors and former skeptics, and some of them are very polarized in their opinions and their tenacity. So yeah, disenfranchised people, when they find a vehicle to say, like some that had like over a 15-year grudge on that, where it affected their whole life, of course they're going to take, when they see a vehicle, to move forward with it and get some form of justice out of it to align with that. So, I've
yeah.
hitched my wagon to a few different sources now that are bearing good fruit.
Yep.
So it's a win-win.
All right,
And
Rob, let's go ahead and shut this show down. Sorry it's been a while, but it is what it is. Rob's been very busy doing his thing. Um, I've been just hanging out. So
well,
we'll
last,
come back and do another show, man. I really enjoy these.
yeah, I've missed doing this. It's just I had my son needed a bedroom, and so I had to move my office and reposition things and set back up, and with all
Your
the
living room looks great, by the way. I love it.
yeah, I'm learning. I'm taking piano lessons too. So that nice old baby grand back there.
All right.
Be
Anything
good.
else, Rob?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the point with David Grusch being hired. People need to understand that the how monumental this is actually, because after the whole entire apparatus of government, DoD, private aerospace, and detractors and all of them that tried to discount him and prove that his narrative was false, for him to be hired on as a staffer for 4 months on this UFO topic.
Yeah.
And then we had, and it's bipartisan. We had Schumer last year that wrote the Schumer Rounds Amendment that mentioned NHI, non-human intelligence, 22 times at least. So for those that don't think there's any there, this is disclosure. Like Lou says, we've already had disclosure. This is confirmation. And I think we've got additional concrete confirmation just in the fact that they hired him on for 4 months, in the process of still trying to get a skip with him to get additional people briefed in Congress. He already gave 11 hours of skip testimony to staffers and lawyers on what he knows. So it's already in Congress. It's just different committees that still want to be briefed in additional skiffs with him. Not that he hasn't, he already has. And why should he go on the tours of doing all these podcasts and things when what he needs is for Congress to investigate his assertions? If he's lying and he's not correct, and all these people that claim there's nothing there, push your congressman to finish this investigation, and we will know the truth either way. Yeah. So it's not up to him to go out and convince the public. He's already said what he has to say. That's his style. Him and Lou are, we have unique personalities in this. So they're all playing their part. But for him, from what I come to understand, he said what he had to say. He's not making a spectacle of himself, because what needs to take place with his testimony is to finish the investigation of classified information that can't be publicly spoken of or shared. So his testimony is different from Lou's because he's got an active investigation that includes the death of some whistleblowers, alleged. So people want answers, David. They need to push their legislators to pick up the investigation and run it to ground. And let's see if he's telling the truth or not. Somebody of that intellect in that high a position, he's the most senior intelligence officer ever on this topic to come forward. And he had scores of people vouching for his credibility and the authenticity of this topic. Carl Nell, Tim Taylor, all these different people. And, we've got John Blitch now and, Jake Barber, they're coming out. These are unimpeachable people that are in the positions to know better than anyone else on the planet the authenticity of this topic. So if they don't know the truth, no one does. So for people like Mick West to say that there's nothing there and it's all bunk and lies and grifters, no, you don't see them hiring Mick West in Congress to be the arbiter of truth. So that tells you what you need to know. So I'll just leave it at that for now. But I doubt I'm going to run this into summer, dragging this out further. It's not good for my health staying immersed in this topic like I am.
I just want to make sure you get the biggest bang for your buck.
I'm going to. I've spent too much time. I got to do it right.
Yeah, and I really wish you would do some grifting by writing a book about this whole experience of yours, because it's worth writing about.
I had a close friend of mine recently suggest that to me, and it didn't ever occur to me when I thought about writing a book on it that books can earn a profit, compensations. I'm like, he was like, well, if you write a book, you could get paid for that, and if it sells. I'm like, I honestly never thought of that before.
Man, I have told you that so many times.
I know, writing a book, but the fact that it would make money, because that is not anything that was on my radar to do.
Oh, you was doing this for a book deal.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm researching a book, like some dishonest brokers in this community that are claiming there's nothing to it, but they're writing books on it and publishing.
Yeah,
saying it's bunk. Yeah, we know who the real grifters are.
Yep,
and I'll prove it.
All right, Rob. Anything else, brother?
No,
that's it. All right, folks. Take care. See you next time.
I'll take care, all right? Nothing but love for you. Nothing but love for you. You think they have any clue what's about to happen to them?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.